Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of Flyover Footy. Halfway through preseason, we come at you live for what we hope is your destination viewing on Thursday night. We've gotten through most of the week. Lord knows we have a ton of news that happened with City, and we're here to break down all of it. So join us. We're looking forward to a fun show. If you're watching this after the fact, hopefully you've heard some good things, and you can kick back and relax because we have all of the news. We have the good, we have the not so good, and we have the I don't know how to feels about it. But with me on through it all on this live stream is a new look for Stuart Holmgren.
Yeah, thanks to Chris Gephardt for the wonderful new artwork avatar to accurately depict how I feel probably most of the time when I'm hearing news about this team. Gotta love the team, gotta also feel the pain with the team. You know, it's the hope that kills.
It's the hope that kills. You had asked me if you should put like a flyover logo in that, and I was like, no, that graphic is perfect. It has the Stu mannerisms. Like I'm staring at that little thing right now, and I'm just, it's like I'm talking straight to you. It's like we're at the bar together. We're at the dam. You have your quintessential STLFC hat and your iconic Fulham jersey.
Yeah, and the ever-present RBF on my face. So
I wouldn't have it any other way, to be fair. And an RBF face might actually be appropriate for some of the things we have to talk about on this show. We have a lot to get to. Stu's with me again until for what, an hour? You've got an hour, maybe a little over an hour if we can stretch you. But that should be enough.
Yeah, we'll see what our stretch goals are tonight.
Let's go ahead and get started. Let's dive right in. So we're going to start the pod recording here in a moment. Drop us any questions or comments in the chats. We've got it flowing on the live stream, so excited to see what everybody's takes are on what we have to talk about, which is quite a bit. So here we go. Welcome in, everyone, to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. My name is Matt Baker, joined by my friend in soccer, Stuart Holmgren, and we are halfway through preseason, folks. It seems incredibly hard to believe. It's almost surreal, the fact that we are about 3 weeks into preseason and we have just 3 more weeks. The time is flying. It will fly over the next few weeks. We are turning the calendar into February, where preseason ends and the regular season begins, February 21st. And we have just one more leg of preseason. We have an entire leg of preseason to recap for you on this episode of Flyover Footy, in addition to the roster continuing to take shape. We have sales, we have signings, we have goodbyes, we have yet to be signed to talk about, and a roster recap to look at it all to see where we sit with this still incomplete St. Louis City roster. And through it all, like I said, I'm joined by my friend Stuart Holmgren. So Stu, let's bring you in. How you doing on this end of January episode of Flyover Footy?
Doing pretty well. I mean, I like to kind of take the morose look on the team every once in a while. Just, every week is every once in a while, but doing pretty well overall. And Matt, I think you just dropped off on me, or I'm talking to myself here.
We were asked in our chat to make yourself bigger. So
there we go.
On our live stream, I just expanded your face to the entire thing.
There we go. No, I am doing well, in all honesty. It's a little chilly in my basement, but slowly making progress towards first getting a face out there and then eventually a camera.
One step at a time. Stu, I feel we have a packed show, so we should probably dive right into it. While we're at the beginning of this episode, though, I want to make one quick plug, 2 quick plugs, actually, maybe 3, because I was going to save this for the end, but I feel like it's something that I want people to know as they're tuning into this. Please join us on February 19th at Blue Jay Brewing for our now second annual live stream to kick off the season. We'll be the 4 of us, spoiler alert, are scheduled to appear. Myself, Stu, Santiago Beltran, and the return of Phil Grooms from his mini hiatus so far. It will be more extended during the season, but we'll have him around for special episodes like this as we gear up for the start of the season. And at that point, we will have everything we know ready to go for the season to give a massive preview of the year ahead, as well as the first match against Charlotte. So Blue Jay Brewing on February 19th, targeting around 7 p.m. right now. So mark your calendars. The next thing is our jerseys are still for sale on Olive and York, rather. St. Louis Freudian slip. Oliveandyork.com, search Flyover Footy. You'll find our jerseys. They are $45 with $10 going to our charity of choice for the 2026 season. And on that note, our charity of choice has been selected for the 2026 season. If I can pull my magic on the live stream, I'm going to show. But Catherine Cares is our charity of choice partner for 2026. Catherine Cares uplifts families of babies facing life-threatening diagnoses. I first met some of the folks behind Catherine Cares, Katie Bomarito, at a Luligan event a couple years ago, and the story touched me to no end. And so we wanted to partner with them, local charity. They provide Heartbeat Bears and restaurant fuel and grocery gift cards to families of babies who receive prenatal or newborn life-threatening diagnoses. Catherine Cares says, we believe these small gestures centered on providing comfort and taking care of basic everyday needs help families in the midst of an extremely difficult struggle. They do amazing work. We are proud and happy to be partnering with them for the 2026 season. And what that looks like for Flyover right now is $10 of every jersey sale, whether you've already bought it or whether you have yet to purchase it, will go to Catherine Cares. We are working, or Stu might not know this yet, but we're going to work on a regular charitable contribution throughout the season. It will probably take the shape of some donation per goal scored for St. Louis, because we want to have a stake in the game, so to speak, of St. Louis succeeding. So something along those lines, more to come on that. But we urge everyone to go to catherinecares.org and help support them as we look forward to supporting them for the 2026 MLS season. That said, let's get right into talking about St. Louis City. And Stu, I feel it's appropriate to pick up kind of where we left off, or where we spent most of the time last week, talking about Klaus, the one and only Klaus. It's not breaking news anymore, folks. Klaus has officially been sold, as the entire world knows, to the LA Galaxy for officially $2.375 million, a cash for trade deal that sends Klaus to be the designated player, taking Ricky Puig's spot at the LA Galaxy. We've had time to digest this. We spent 50 minutes on last week's episode. So if you want to hear us wax poetic and talk about all the different angles, every facet of this, check out our last episode, because I don't like repeating ourselves too much, even though we were speculating about news that we now know is official. I want to focus a little bit more about the deal itself and how it impacts St. Louis, because we do have a few bits of information that were released in this that gives us an idea of how St. Louis City moves forward after having sold Klaus. The deal, like I said, $2.375 million cash for player trade makes Klaus the largest ever cash trade in City's history, outgoing cash transfer in City history. It beats Nico Gioacchini, Indiana Vassilev, AZ Jackson, all that stuff. Corey Ray, sporting director of St. Louis City, said Klaus has been an important part of the club and gave our fans unforgettable memories, especially during that first season. He represented City SC and this city with passion and will always be part of the history of this club. We thank Klaus for his enormous contributions and wish him nothing but success in the next chapter of his career. But the most interesting thing that Corey Ray had to say was the next bit. Quote, while we did not plan to make this move ahead of the season, this was an opportunity that made sense for both Klaus and the club, especially with his contract expiring at the end of the season. The funds we receive give us meaningful flexibility, and we're excited to reinvest into the roster as we continue to build and improve the squad over the upcoming transfer windows. Windows being plural in that statement, incredibly important. Stu, what are your first thoughts on this overall deal before we break down some of Ray's comments and what this means for the roster? It's essentially what we knew, but a little bit more money. What do you got?
Well, speaking of money, I'm surprised you chose this picture for Klaus on the graphic and not the pay me that he did at the end of the season.
Couldn't find a quality photo of that one.
Yeah, I think it is telling, and kind of we all expected with when we're talking windows, we're talking getting this team back into position to compete in the Western Conference. We are talking multiple windows, and it sucks that I was pretty annoyed last week. But I mean, it's going to take a while to invest. It's clear that we're probably not bringing a guy in, starting striker in this window before it closes. Which, yeah,
And that's the takeaway that everybody has, is focusing on the transfer windows. What I want to remind folks is this isn't necessarily new in the concept of it, because Corey Ray told us back in December to expect over the next 6 to 12 months the squad overhaul will continue to occur. And we've seen a lot of that already, this being the obvious biggest piece of that, the most impactful to fans, the most impactful to our on-field performance. And to me, almost as important as, if not as important as, the idea of multiple transfer windows being how we reinvest this 2.375 and any other game that we still have. The first part of Ray's quote is kind of illuminating in how quickly this probably came about, and what their plans were going into this season for that striker position. While we did not plan to make this move ahead of the season, it was an opportunity. Ray is a shrewd MLS front office executive. He knows the ins and outs of contracts, the valuations of players, the ability to extract value, taking precedence when it can in your search to overhaul a roster and look to change out and make your stamp really on the St. Louis City roster construction. So that feels like what this is, where they might have wanted to go into the season with Klaus at this point in time, going into mid-January into February. You want to go in with this type of player. We know what Klaus brings. We've talked about it for years. But having an opportunity, because the LA Galaxy need that high caliber player to occupy a DP slot to make their own push, and they're willing to potentially overpay for Klaus. I don't know if 2.375 would. There's a lot of people who consider Klaus very valuable. There's a lot of people who consider Klaus not DP worthy. If you don't consider Klaus a DP, 2.375 is overpaying, bar none, like unequivocally. That is overpaying if you don't consider Klaus a DP. I consider Klaus one of those fringe players where I have argued that I don't think he's provided true DP value for St. Louis consistently. Not to say that at his best he doesn't offer that, but I do think Ray was able to get just about maximum value for Klaus, knowing it's a 1-year rent-a-player type of a situation. And into the summer, we wouldn't have had anywhere near this price tag. Definitely going into the end of the season, absolutely not. But the problem is now we are living in the world where we have been in for the past couple of years. The thing we speculated on last week, hearkening back to Indiana Vassilev, beginning of last season, Nico Gioacchini the season before that, where you do get value for players. You got $1 million for Indiana Vassilev. You got $2 million for Nico Gioacchini. Nobody argued about it's good business to sell these players at that time for that money. Nobody, I think, is arguing about the same for Klaus. Good bit of business to get that money. The problem now is Ray is basically admitting that we're probably going into this season the exact same way that we went in the past couple of years. And I've got a problem with that. I'm not upset about being intentional and mindful and very particular about who you search out as a designated player, because you're going to sign that player to a 2, 3, or 4-year deal. That seems pretty obvious based on some of the other deals we're going to talk about here in a minute. Ray is thinking long-term with the players that he's bringing in right now. These are not 1-year contracts, and he's not going to sign a DP on a 1-year contract. So I get not rushing it, but at the same time, the situation you've gotten yourself into because you've maximized the value, because you've chosen to extract all of that as much as you can from the sale, is you're crippling yourself in a pretty big way on field, not just when it comes to the depth of the striker position, but almost inarguably, I feel, the quality of your starting striker right now being Simon Betcher. That seems like, from the lineups we've seen in preseason, from the players we just have available, healthy or otherwise, it's Simon Betcher. And even at 2024, Simon Betcher coming in, what he did at the end of the season, that's arguable top tier striker caliber in Major League Soccer. It's arguable that it's competitive striker caliber. It's definitely not designated player striker, but 2025 Simon Betcher was a dumpster fire. And not to be mean, I'm trying to be level-headed here. I also don't think that's arguable either. The massive underperformance of goals to expected goals, the inability to push Klaus for a starting role at any point in the season. Going into the season with Simon Betcher as our striker is akin to going into the season with Sam Adeniran as our striker in 2024. It didn't work then, and I'm worried that it's not going to work now unless Yohan DeMay is able to get something much more out of Betcher than he was able to provide us last season.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know it's not ideal, but going back to the cash for, I mean, Galaxy have that cash they're willing to drop to fill out that DP spot. I mean, it's not coming out of their game account. Klaus also gets 10% of the fee, correct?
About that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
So I mean,
yeah,
he wins in that too. So, and
true.
arguably it's a win-win-win as long as we reinvest. And it doesn't seem like we're reinvesting this window. You've gone over that. It's Betcher starting up top against some of the best teams in the Western Conference to start the season is not really fueling us with a lot of excitement. But this is a great opportunity for him to get some message board motivation for the first few games. Just get that chip on your shoulder, Simon, and be the ish poster or stir. We know you are, and show us your hold up play exists.
I think this can and should be the fire underneath Betcher that gets lit, and he has a lot to prove to himself and to the club as he goes into. I think he's on his contract year this year after signing a new one. But Betcher has as much to prove to himself as he does to the St. Louis fan base. There's a question in our chat from Jerry Hayes. Are you saying Ray could and should have said no to the Galaxy on taking Klaus? I'm saying it's clear what his priorities were. His priorities are not necessarily to put out the app. I'm trying to be careful with my words here because it appears for me that the priorities of Corey Ray at this point with this move are not entirely guaranteeing that we put out the absolute best roster we can match day one based on the players that we had available in mid-January. His priorities are the long-term success and sustainability of the club. To take this first year, this window, summer window into the winter window probably, and create the roster that he believes will be best successful in Major League Soccer. And this, to me, is a growing pain of that. This is an opportunity that presented itself, and he said it there. They didn't plan on this. It was an opportunity that presented itself. And so he chose maximum value for a player whose contract was ending versus putting the best player on the field match day one in that position. That's the choice that was made. Now, that's not to say he still doesn't have time to fill that in the winter. Still possible. Seems unlikely given some of the comments, but you also aren't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Something came along incredibly quickly for the Galaxy, and they were able to pull the trigger. Something comes along quickly for St. Louis. There's nothing to say that they can't do the same. The problem is right now, we are in that nebulous area where all we can do is speculate on how quickly we can replace Klaus. Stu, the one thing I think we can all agree on is that there is a need to replace Klaus. There's a need to sign another striker as good or better production-wise than Klaus was at that position. And the speed with which Corey Ray can do that, I don't think it can be fast enough for the fan base. And a lot of fans aren't going to be happy until that occurs, proving that Ray can reinvest the money that he's accruing successfully. Because St. Louis is now over, if they convert all of this to GAM, which they can, MLS teams are allowed to convert up to $3 million per season in cash transfers into general allocation money. Basically, you convert that directly into reinvesting into the roster. Until Ray starts spending some of this GAM, which he will have a lot available after the roster, after you buy down some of the roster to fit into the salary cap, then St. Louis fans are just wondering, when is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? And can it happen successfully? Because we saw a lot of failures on that front when it came to Lutz. I'm thinking about Jean da Silva. I'm thinking about guys like Nicholas Dewar, the stops and starts and all the things just didn't work. So Ray has made a splash when it comes to an outgoing transfer. Now his responsibility is to show that he can make a splash on an incoming. And the next ones aren't going to be that splash, but I do think I am not yet at the point, anywhere near the point where I'm saying Ray's done something wrong. We should be questioning his decision-making. I'm not there. I'm just saying for the beginning of the season, if Ray is unable to get a player in, which it seems like he's willing to take that gamble, it's clear that he's prioritizing the long-term success of what his planning is versus just winning match day one with the best possible roster.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it'll make the spring 2027 short sprint season a lot more interesting. It'll make the, spring 2026 half season maybe a little more painful. So
that one's going to be interesting. That's for sure. Something else that was painful this week, Stu, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and get the other painful news out of the way. This one's pretty late breaking. It came out Wednesday night of this week that Henry Kessler said his goodbyes to St. Louis. On Instagram, Kessler took to the platform and said, "The time has come to say goodbye. I would like to thank everyone at City for making the last 18 months together so memorable and great. Getting traded in the middle of the season and moving within 28 hours of being notified wasn't easy, but the team helped make my transition as smooth as possible. The super supportive Carolyn and the rest of ownership, the front office who brought me to St. Louis despite all they had to give up to get me, all my teammates, all my coaches, the entire staff, and every single fan. You have all been so amazing, and I do not take it for granted. And there wasn't a single game I played in St. Louis that wasn't sold out. That is truly special." Kessler goes on to say, "To the city of St. Louis, I can't say thank you enough. So much so, it gets its own goodbye post. I have loved playing for this club and representing the city. St. Louis City will always be a part of me. Thank you, City." And so that, Stu, was followed up on Thursday with the explanation of why he said his goodbyes. And it was because Henry Kessler is signed with Charlotte FC. He joins Tim Ream as, I think our friend Chat City Tactics referred to this as the best domestic center back duo in Major League Soccer, potentially at least. Kessler has signed with Charlotte through the end of the 2026 season with club options for June of 27, which takes him through the sprint season, and the 27-28 full season calendar shift. What are your thoughts, Stu? And I do have to say this on air, a big I hope you're doing okay to our friend Jerry Hayes with the O. Henry bars and the undying love for Henry Kessler. Shout out to Jerry for being an unwavering supporter of Henry Kessler, but he's gone now. And what do you take about this, Stu?
Well, Kessler even followed up with a second goodbye post on Instagram that he put out 11 hours ago that, is really just kind of a love letter to the city of St. Louis, which, I mean, I'm a St. Louis homer through and through. So, I mean, I love this guy beyond his performance on the field, which I loved. I didn't love the injuries, but I'm sure he didn't either.
No.
But he wrote, "This post could be 20 plus slides of places and moments I've enjoyed. And perhaps when I have the time and phone storage, I will post that. From Forest Park to the Arch, which I made sure to see again on my last day. I promise there is no one that has explored more of the city over the last year and a half than me." And he has a first and a third part to that post, which is great. But I mean, what a guy. I'm looking forward to seeing him in 3 weeks, but not looking forward to seeing him wearing that horrible Charlotte badge. So
insult to injury, man.
Yeah, for the 2026 Baker Cup. And for those of you who don't know, Matt had a little tussle years ago that he got in with the front office of Charlotte FC. So that was some entertainment. What, in 2022? Was that 2021?
It was 21 into 2022.
Okay, yeah.
As both of our teams were starting up. And I think it was over an app is what started it all when we launched our app, and I was excited for it and everything. And what was the name of the Charlotte FC? Nick Kelly, former president of Charlotte FC, came at me on social media because I was hyped about an app because our team hadn't kicked off yet and wouldn't for another year or two. And so we got into it. Their supporters joined in, and it became a thing where, for no real on-field reason, I just grew to really dislike Charlotte FC. And that's really not ever faded. I've been more annoyed, if anything, because after their awful start, they have found more consistent success than us. And so that's been really annoying and aggravating. So to see Henry Kessler join Tim Ream, guys that I just love over in Charlotte, I'm not happy about it. And I'm definitely not going to be happy about having them come open Energizer Park to start this season. And I'm definitely not going to be happy if we can't beat them on February 21st.
Yeah, and I think with Kessler, the devil's going to be in the details, just like so many of these MLS contracts. I mean, what's the salary going to be? Would we have been willing to match it? I mean, clearly he loves St. Louis, and you get the feeling he wanted to be here if the salary was right. But I guess it wasn't right, or whatever happens. But if he ends up being healthy, he could be a return to being the top center back he was in Revolution for that 18-month span he had a few years ago.
Health is his thing. If he can stay healthy, he's going to be a beast for their back line. And that's a good point on the context of this. Henry Kessler's contract option was declined last season by St. Louis, and presumably because it was higher than St. Louis was willing to pay as they went into an offseason in so much front office turmoil, not wanting to further hamstring, I suppose, the incoming front office with what was reported and rumored to be near a max TAM contract amount for Henry Kessler. If St. Louis had picked up his option, his salary would have increased pretty sizably, as we understand it. And so with all of that occurring, they declined his option, specifically noting they were still in negotiations with him, though. And the speculation had been Kessler looking at options in Europe. And I think that speculation from the fan base led to a lot of eyebrow raising when it was Charlotte that signed him. So the most interesting thing to me now is all eyes on the MLSPA salary guide that's going to come out in April or May of this year. The MLSPA releases their salary numbers twice a year, once in the spring, once after the summer transfer window, that makes public player salaries. That's going to be important to see what Roman Berkey's salary is, and we'll be able to have confirmation of sorts on if we can buy him down for the 2027 season and beyond. We know we can't this season. He's a DP without the ability to be bought down. But Henry Kessler is interesting because if St. Louis was not willing to pay near max TAM, how were those negotiations going? And to the point where he signed with Charlotte, what did he sign with Charlotte for? And that will give us some kind of context likely on what St. Louis might have been willing to pay. It's not fair to say if Charlotte is paying him just $1 million flat or less, then St. Louis would have gone to St. Louis for that amount. Maybe he wanted, we don't know any of those details. So I'm not going to speculate on it too far, but it's going to give us some more context. And for better or for worse, we'll at least have a little bit more idea of what it might have taken to keep Henry Kessler and give us insight into maybe some of the mindsets that are occurring right now, as even though we didn't pick or bring Henry Kessler back, we have new players that we've brought in this week to talk about here in a moment, in addition to guys like Daniel Edelman and Conrad Vollum. So any other comments on Henry Kessler before we actually go into some good news, Stu?
No, I just wish King Kess all the best in Charlotte, except when he's playing St. Louis.
Except when he's playing St. Louis. That's a good way to put it. You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. And on this episode, as we're recording this on Thursday evening, we're getting into some good news. And so I'm going to enjoy a beverage from our good friends at Blue Jay Brewing. Not quite the wind down because it's still preseason, but it's always good to support those who support us and our upcoming live show on the 19th. Now, the good news, let's get right into it. Rafael Santos starts off the good news for St. Louis City. Rafael Santos has been signed by St. Louis City through the 2027 season with club options for 27-28 and 28-29. So we have him until the sprint season is over, and then we could pick up options for 2 more seasons. Santos is a 27-year-old Brazilian left back, and he's a left-footed left back at that, with Corey Ray saying Rafael has proven experience in MLS and will be a strong addition to our roster as we prepare for this season. He's a dynamic attacking left back who has spent several years in this league gaining valuable experience that will make him a great fit for our locker room. And that valuable experience comes in the way of Orlando City, where he had 75 regular season starts, with 2 goals and 8 assists, and also spending time with the Colorado Rapids last season after they acquired him for $125,000 in general allocation money from Orlando, where he joined in August for the remainder of the season. Colorado declined his option, so Santos, while I don't believe he qualified for free agency itself, he was essentially up for grabs in Major League Soccer. So we did not pay a transfer fee, and now we have a left-footed left back. What are your thoughts on this one, Stu?
I mean, we needed another left back, so it's a positive. I mean, Orlando City fans seem to have liked Santos. I guarantee that Santos is going to be popular with Santos, the supporters group here in St. Louis.
I can only imagine the signs that'll be coming in the tifo.
Oh, it'll be great. I'm excited to see what they do with it. Uh, no, I mean I think he's a great depth, squad player, possibly starter. He was on I think 375,000 to 400,000 guaranteed last year salary, so he's not too high, assuming he's in the same general area.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that Orlando fans say kind of passes the eye test. He's got good size, good speed, good ball control and movement. That he feels like if he puts everything together, he should be kind of one of the better left backs in the league. So it doesn't seem like a downside anything there, especially that we're not spending any of that game that we got from, future game that we got from Klaus on him. So,
Right.
and also he's able to put service into a box for one of our new signings to potentially capitalize on.
So, Stu, the question for me becomes, what should we expect from Rafael Santos to start the season? He's already kind of shown flashes of brilliance in preseason, and we'll get to the matches in preseason where we'll touch on his performance there. But he introduces a different dynamic than any other player we have on the roster as a left-footed left back who can likely create width on the left side. And Corey Ray's talked about his attacking prowess. We know he is a better attacker than he is a defender. Where do you see him lining up better, left back in a 4-man back line, or possibly as a left wing back if we have 3 center backs? Or is there really a downside to him on that left side?
I mean, I think he's the starter on both, but who backs him up in both of those might change a little bit. Do we see Hebert as more of the left back depth behind him? And, left wing back, we suddenly have a lot more depth with obviously Conrad Vollum and Mackay Joyner
Mm-hmm.
there. But yeah, do we see him starting as a left wing back with 5 at the back and Conrad Vollum as the right wing back and Tots backing him up?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, that to me is the true question. Is we've talked for most of preseason about our lack of fullback depth, the holes that existed. We have Thomas Totland, who's a capable and strong at times right back and right wing back, but on the left side it was a barren wasteland. And now suddenly we're flush with assets here. We have Conrad Vollum, who can and has played left wing back and left back for us. In his preferred side is the left side. However, he is more of an inverted wing back of sorts, where he is comfortable pressing the ball into the final third, but he's right-footed, and so he'll have a different version of his dynamicism that he'll bring to the table. He can also play midfield, and he can also play the right side. Under David Critchley, Conrad Vollum was our starting and preferred right back over Thomas Totland. So we're not going to get into the potentials on why that was the case, because that was Critchley's choice. To me, I look at this as the biggest question. Maybe the biggest question in context of Rafael Santos and the next person we're going to talk about, Mbacké Fall. Do we put stock into the fact that these guys are Corey Ray signings and potentially brought in, or likely brought in, not just to build a roster the way Ray wants it built, but to play specifically to Johan Demay's preferred style and what he wants out of players? This alignment conversation comes back to me, and I'm joking in that, using that term, but I'm not joking also, because if Ray's bringing these players specifically in for his roster build and for his head coach, and there is alignment into what the expectations are, then are we crazy to think that almost implicitly Rafael Santos and Conrad Vollum would be above a Thomas Totland on the depth chart?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I mean, you say alignment a lot, and it's a kind of a joke in some ways, but it's very much true that we're kind of getting that for the first time in quite a while in this squad. Mm-hmm. Last year, it seemed like there were Hacks guys and there were Lutz's guys,
yes,
and Olaf didn't seem to have a style or bring in his guys. So just from an organizational perspective, that has to be better. I mean, it can't be couldn't possibly be worse than what we saw last year under Olaf, at least.
Yeah, and I think we're going to continue to see more of this. And it's almost why I put in a Daniel Edelman over a Chris Durkin just from the jump. And I hear Johan DeMay talk about some of his other players. I know Chris Durkin's on the leadership council, but he was last year as well throughout all of his injuries and everything. Those kinds of things don't necessarily mean a player's going to start. Josh Yaro has been on the leadership council too. But specifically talking about Santos is I do think the more and more I kind of evaluate this, I look at how some of these preseason lineups are starting to come out in the second game, especially where maybe you're turning the page of sorts from pure fitness and just get guys out there in their individual profiles to let's see how some of these guys play together. Santos as that left-sided winger or defender definitely seems like he was brought in intentionally. With his salary last year being $400,000, he's making more than a Thomas Tallinn. He's got his experience in starting. And like you said, he has found success with Orlando City. Last year was kind of, he was brought in August and the option was declined. Colorado's weird about declining options and signing players in the super draft and just discarding them. It's an odd organization. But I kind of think of Santos as coming in as our presumptive right back or right wing back at this point. We'll talk about the rest of the depth in a minute. But I do think you're right about that. Any other things you want to talk about Santos before we move on?
No, just he's going to be a really interesting one. And, we've kind of had a carousel at left back since. Yeah. It started out really with Ezra Armstrong back in 2021, fall of 2020, or no, January 2022, when we brought him in for that first MLS2 season and bought him from Pittsburgh Riverhounds. He was kind of the first one. I guess technically you could say Selmir Pedro was after that or slightly before that. So, revolving door. There's 20 left backs basically who have played in that position for us. So just having more depth can't be a bad thing. It's raising the floor from last year.
Raising the floor, and I think it is providing a more prototypical look at your fullback. All the rage lately are inverted wingers, inverted fullbacks, and this kind of goes against the grain on that. And I think it works better in a 3 center back look. And on that note, we can talk about our next exciting signing from this week. Mamadou Mbake Fall, signing with St. Louis from FC Barca B on a multi-year contract signed through June 30th, 2028. So he is already signed through that first calendar shift season, and he has 2 options beyond that, 2028-29 and 29-30. Fall is a 23-year-old Senegalese central defender, so center back, and he will occupy an international roster slot. So check off one of those boxes, basically the one that Klaus freed up. So we're doing fine on that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Mbake comes to us from Barca B after seeing time with LAFC and Villarreal. One of the keys to this move is that Mbake was a free transfer. And this was confirmed in Barca's announcement saying, quote, the 23-year-old defender's contract with the club stood to expire at the end of the ongoing season. And as such, they have let him leave without a transfer fee, but retained a percentage of any future sale from the MLS outfit. So we've got a sell-on fee for Mbake at some point if we sell him during his contract. That's fine. That's pretty standard. But the ability for Ray to sign Mbake with no transfer fee is pretty important. Presumably he will occupy a senior roster slot, but the no transfer fee is a nice bit of business where you still stockpile that GAM. You have a 23-year-old who has been rated as one of the best ball handling and passing center backs in the 4th division of Spain's leagues that Barca B plays in, the reserve side for Barcelona. Stu, what are your thoughts about Mbake Fall adding a second Fall to our back line?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything LAFC fans say about him. He sounds like an exciting potential player. He's great breaking lines. He's passing the ball. He's an aerial threat as far as set pieces. So maybe Santos whips in some balls on free kicks and reaches Fall near the net. So it seems interesting. LAFC fans are saying that he can get beat in open space pretty easily. So that's maybe a concern, especially if Timo's not the most mobile central center back if we play five at the back. But it definitely seems like we're building an intriguing back line, at least when everyone's healthy.
So if we're building an intriguing back line, if everyone's healthy, do you think the addition of Mbappe adds credence to us moving to a 3 center back look, where you might look at Falou and Mbappe, the Fall brothers, as well? Not real brothers, or not actually brothers. They did grow up in the same city, the same area, as Tom Timmerman found out. But Fall is a very common name in Senegal, so there's no actual relation between the two, just for clarification's sake. So between the Falls and Timo Baumgartel, that would seem to be your 3-man center back grouping. But let's almost put a pin in whether or not we're going 3 or 2 center backs, and just think about it from a depth chart perspective, first, second, third. If whether it's 2 wide center backs or 2 center backs in and of itself, the same conversation we had for Rafael Santos, it kind of applies for Mbappe Fall. Would Fall presumably be above Baumgartel because he's brought in with the intention of playing the Yohan Demé style, or is that kind of reading too much into it at this point?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Does he prefer 5 at the back? If it's 5 at the back, I mean, you have to do Fall, Timo, Fall at this point, assuming.
So it's almost a moot point.
Yeah. But yeah, no, if we do 4 at the back and we do Santos, I could see Santos Fall, assuming that Mbappe kind of brings some of the same positives that Timo brings, with hopefully a little more pace for recovery defensively.
And I would think with Timo likes to be on the ball as well, but just thinking back to how some of our center backs operated, even under Olaf, where we're trying to play the ball out of the back. I think of our wide center backs as those better ball handling players that you want to progress the ball just a little bit more. Falou obviously is your left center back. Mbappe would presumably be your right center back. And I think from the start of the season, Mbappe is going to be a little bit behind the curve. He, as well as Conrad Wallem, still are dealing with visa issues. So they're neither of them are with the team, still working through all that paperwork, unfortunately, for the internationals. But the good news is that Mbappe has last played a competitive match this month on January 11th. He's been held out since then, presumably due to transfer talks, but the only thing holding him up right now is the paperwork, just like Conrad Wallem. So from a fitness perspective, you would assume that he's going to be ready to go pretty quickly. It's getting up to speed with the system, the play style that Demé is going to want to employ with his center backs, and making sure that Mbappe is comfortable in that kind of a model. But also similar to Wallem, if he's in form, presumably, then you want to get that talent out there as quick as possible on the field. You're not going to, and at a center back position, I mean, no disrespect to center backs, but it's a little bit different in getting up to speed as a center back versus, especially in a 3 center back look, if that's where we go, versus what you would want from your midfielders or your attacking wingers in this kind of potentially this kind of a system. So if the paperwork all gets worked out and Mbappe comes in maybe by Coachella, which is, I think, the hope. We'll find out more next week when we're able to talk to the club and get an update on some of those paperworks. Do you see him being able to get in as quickly as possible, or is this going to be he's got to work his way back up based on the last time he played being just January 11th?
Well, playing January 11th is, I mean, it's a lot better than coming in totally cold. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, if he arrives in a week, that might change things. But I mean, if he's not ready, do we play 4 at the back? Do we have to, or do we go, Hebert, Timo, and McNaughton if we sign him, or Lilligren or Yarrow as that third center back, or just Hebert and Timo? I mean, it's
and we'll touch on that in just a moment, because there is one other person I want to talk about before we get into the roster recap and look at where we stand right now, including the depth chart conversation, and that's Dante Polvera. It is reported that Dante Polvera, the central midfielder from Aberdeen FC, is a done deal for St. Louis. Our friend Larry Henry Jr. has reports that documents have been signed and that Polvera is reportedly heading to St. Louis for a fee for close to $200,000, a multi-year contract with the club announcement likely coming next week. Could happen on Friday, so that's the caveat here. And if it does, then we signed Dante Polvera. But as of now, it's reported that the deal is done and that he's on his way to St. Louis to join the club. He is an American, so we don't have to deal with the international deal that we did. Polvera is a potentially exciting player, 25 years old. And as Derek Ray had said to our friend Jeremy Clements on social media, Derek Ray, longtime broadcast partner and friend of Lutz Pfannenstiel, who is the sporting director with Aberdeen, said Polvera is a, quote, nice footballer in person. Said, I think the issue is knowing his best position. Is he an 8, a 6, or something in between? Used as a center back too. Wonder if the slightly less physical MLS will suit him. Noted and Ray noted it's time for separation from Aberdeen. He's a cup hero for the club and for the fans. So we're getting a player who's played for a few years now with Aberdeen in Scotland and coming to bolster our midfield core. We'll talk about this one more when it's official. Definitely cover that in full with what the details end up being. But for a $200,000 fee, multi-year contract, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Polvera could be a supplemental roster slot, depending on what his salary is, which is reportedly in just the $100,000 range over in Scotland. But either way, senior supplemental, knowing what our midfield depth is right now, knowing what Ray had said about him being an 8, a 6, somewhere in between. We've got Leuven, we've got Edelman, Durkin, Ostrak's hurt. We've got Miggy Perez. How do you see Dante Polvera potentially fitting in? And I mean, if you want to talk about the Edu Leuven situation, you can, but just in general, how do you see him fitting in?
Well, I mean, Aberdeen fans said he performed well in Europe. I haven't talked to any Battery fans on how he performed in USL Championship in 2023. He went on loan there.
With Charleston.
Yeah, Charleston Battery. But I mean, they seem to be treating this kind of as a mixed bag of his departure over there, where some are excited, get a little bit of something for it, and some are a little annoyed because they still have the chance to push for one of the top spots in the Scottish Premiership, and they're sending out some depth. So just a little interesting how, yeah, obviously it's Lutz sending him to his old team here in St. Louis. So I don't know. I mean, the Edu question is kind of the big one, but do we do a midfield of Hartle, Polvera, and Edelman to start first week? I mean, I could see it going with that. Or do we Durkin? Obviously, Leuven, if he's starting, if he's available, he's starting. But
right.
No, it's again, it's raising the floor, and we're raising the floor a lot from last year, but we've kind of clipped the ceiling a bit.
Agreed. Yeah. And on that note, instead of burying this news later on, it's important to note, and I think extremely pertinent to the time of the situation. Edu Leuven was not with the club to finish their Florida leg. Obviously, the club has since returned to St. Louis for some training, and we'll talk about those dates in a minute. But Edu Leuven missed the second preseason match against the Tampa Bay Rowdies due to personal reasons. He ended up flying back to St. Louis prior to the match and was not available. So that's the context with which we talk about Edu Leuven's availability going into this season, and it's probably the worst possible topic and subject that we could think about on top of all of the things that in context don't matter with soccer and sports and things. These are people's lives, and we wish the Leuvens all the best and hope that Edu can return to the field, because if Edu can return to the field, then that means things are okay for the time being, and nobody knows the future. Nobody knows what's in store, but our thoughts and prayers are with the Leuven family. Stu, let's now turn a little bit to the roster itself. This is what we're looking at as far as what's happened so far. Off-season recap of sorts. We have the outgoings that we know about, including for sure Henry Kessler now. I've still got Devin Padelford as still in negotiations, only because we haven't received an update. And Padelford still has City stuff all over his Instagram account. Had to check that to see if he's gone back to Minnesota. no new news on Devin Padelford, and with the signing of Rafael Santos, it just doesn't seem like there's a big need for that at this point. But that's still got the caveat. Obviously, we sold Klaus this week, so we are up to 12 outgoing players from last season, if I count correctly, and we have 5 incomings. If Conrad Vollum is counted as an incoming because he was out of contract, and we signed him to a new contract. Joins Daniel Edelman, Rafael Santos, and Mbake Fall, with Dante Polvera as the not yet official, estimated, should be confirmed soon. It's not a light the world on fire transition, but it's a clear transition. You end the contracts or decline contracts or bid goodbyes to 12 players who were on your team last year. And that's not insignificant from both the volume or the specific players. Alfredo Morales played a lot. Rasmus Alm, when he was healthy, played. Henry Kessler, obviously. Klaus, obviously. And then everybody else had squad rotation type roles. But you replace them with some of the guys that you would expect to now take more center stage roles. And this is where we were talking about Santos being the left back starter, Fall being the center back starter, Edelman, Vollum being starters at this point. There's definitely an argument about the quality of the starters that we'll have, but it does seem like, at least in isolation here of these positions, you have, and I just realized I put Mbake Fall at left back in my graphic. That should be center back. I in conversations of these players, the replacements that they're stepping in for or improving upon would seem to be improving these positions. Santos being a left back, I think, adds stability, at least at the level with Padelford, and arguably more because of the attacking history that Santos has. Scored a goal with his left foot just a day or two after arriving. Conrad Vollum returns. Daniel Edelman, I think, is supposed to provide stability to a level we haven't seen at the 6 before, in the quality and the staying within himself at that portion of the field. So that, to me, is an improvement at the 6. And then you have Fall at center back, which is, you can't help but make the comparison to Henry Kessler and saying, okay, quality wise, this should be the like for like of sorts. Not saying they play exactly like for like, but as you lose one and gain the other, it's no coincidence to me that when we sell Klaus, we immediately announce Rafael Santos, and the Kessler news breaks and we immediately announce Mbake Fall. I don't think we had to announce Mbake Fall today on Thursday. I think we chose to do that partly because of the Kessler timing. Speculation on that entirely, but he's not with the club. The visa is still working out. The paperwork might be official. It might have been official yesterday or the day before. You never know. The timing of that just implies that you're adding a piece of value with a player that you're losing. That's why I think we can count on these kinds of players to make meaningful contributions right from the jump when they were going to be ready to go. And then the Dante Polvera is the biggest question mark of these players right here, whether it's depth, whether it's potential Leuven replacement and what he offers. I will be incredibly interested in seeing what Polvera offers once he arrives, getting a chance to see him at Coachella and what his role actually will be. Possibly the most interesting of any of these 5 for me watching at Coachella, which the matches will be available, is going to be Dante Polvera. But what do you think about these incomings compared to the outgoings, and who might you be most excited about as far as who we've brought in?
Well, there's a lot of outgoings who, good servants of the club, but Watts, Wenzel, Pedro, Seth Antley, Jay Reed, Joey Zielinski, those are guys who really, I think, were low-hanging fruit that we knew were going to move on. Rasmus Alm, lovely guy, injury prone. He was obviously not going to come back next year or this year. Devin Padelford. I mean, I think a lot of people loved him last year. Loved the mustache. We love the long throws.
Shout out to our friend Tom Shores.
Yeah. So it's honestly, when you put it this way, the outgoings don't look quite as bad compared to the incomings. I mean, Klaus is the biggest one because there's no like for like replacement compared to the others. But we've raised the floor, but the ceiling needs needs improvement. And I guess that's going to be the project for the summer window.
Well, and one thought that just kind of occurred to me here is this feels like Ray is just positioning in the opening salvo of moves on his chessboard, where he inherited a roster that was devoid of talent in a lot of ways and had a lot of just straight up holes: left back, right back depth, center backs, midfield. Holes and depth were lacking drastically. And you see where his focus was in pursuit of that, where a lot of these guys on the outgoings, when you look at this list, are depth. All Morales, Watts, Wenzel, Pedro, Antwi, Jay Reed, Zielinski, Padelford, Oliveras, Kessler, and Klaus. 3 of those players were no-brainer starters by the end of the season last year: Klaus, Kessler, and Padelford. Everybody else was depth and guys that we were kind of anxious when we saw them in the starting lineup because that meant there was an injury elsewhere. The replacements here have the potential to introduce 3, maybe 4 starters at best case scenario. Edelman, Santos, and Fall, I would expect to be those no-brainer starters. Polvera, we have yet to see, and Konrad Valem is going to replace Konrad Valem from loan with Slavia Prague last year. Tongue in cheek, obviously, but my thing here too is we still have some flexibility. So the initial salvo of setting up the chessboard is what's occurring here. It's not obviously not making splashes that rival the moves of bringing in a Klaus to the LA Galaxy or signing Timo Werner for San Jose. Those kinds of moves. This isn't that yet. This is setting the team up to be better from the ground up so that you can then sign a player or 2 or 3 like that. And also using what you have available on the roster slots. Corey Ray inherited a roster that was already, and this graphic is very tiny if you're on the stream, but if you're listening to it, Corey Ray inherited a roster that already had 2 DPs and 3 U22s. So he has very limited space to sign that massive difference maker. He has a ton of GAM to play with. He has a good amount of TAM to play with. But that make or break position that really you can rely on to carry your team through the nitty gritty, he has very little options for. And so going back to what I said at the very beginning, yes, there is anxiety around filling that slot, especially when you sell Klaus, because you've now lost your reliable double-digit goal scorer, arguably your only double-digit goal scorer who's capable of that, at least from what we've seen. You aren't just needing to sign a DP at this point. You're needing to replace that in whatever shape it takes. So there's added anxiety. The urgency is there, obviously, but this is a long-term plan with very little slots available, with contracts that are kind of lengthy with Hartl and Berkey in some of these main slots. And not even to mention, but I have to harp on this, probably the most annoying thing of these coveted slots is to start the first half of the season, folks, we are wasting a U22 slot. Jake Girdwood-Reich is a U22 taking up a U22 slot. I had that confirmed with the team on 2 different occasions, and he's playing for Auckland FC in New Zealand in Australia's A-League. That was arguably the most horrendous move of any move made in the Lutz and Hackworth era. I cannot fathom how you could make that move, remove a piece of a slot from the board and get no value on field in its place. How did things get so bad with either that player or that front office to where they would just punt a U22 slot for an entire half a season with this incoming group needing to have this kind of important flexibility? So if you talk about Ray's not making moves, this is a piece of the puzzle. Is the roster that he was given with the slots and the contracts. It's not like he was set up for success from the get-go. The moves we've made are working with what he has, and knowing how important it is to hit a slam dunk, hit an open goal, whatever sports phrase you want to use on this DP and U22 slot, he takes that seriously. Now, in the summer, we presumably will be selling or ending the contract, something with JGR, clearing him off our books of a U22 in the summer. So that will open something else up. So this summer, if we haven't signed a DP by this summer, I fully expect us to have both a DP and a U22 slot available, not just one option. That is something else that I think Ray and Diego are working for with this. Looking forward to having that additional bit of flexibility.
I mean, it's a small thing too. Another move that Ray made was, you mentioned him, Christian Oliveras. Nothing against him, but we had our third keeper taking up a supplementary spot on the roster, and now he's on loan to Sporting Jacksonville in USL. So good luck to him. I don't know if his option in 2027 will get picked up, but he's under contract for 2026. But now our third choice keeper is City 2. So we're not using up that supplemental spot on a player who in all likelihood will never see the field this season.
Exactly. And the question in the chat from Safe City STL, has the recall date passed for JGR? Unfortunately, yes. The recall date was January 1st, and JGR appeared, I think it was January 4th, most recently after that. He's since appeared in additional games. But yes, the recall date has passed. JGR will remain with Auckland through his June loan and remain occupying a U22 slot during that. Unless something drastic changes where they could use, Jeremy Clements asked in the chat, is there any scenario where we can use GAM or TAM to buy down JGR early? Yes, I don't have the specific numbers in front of me, but the transfer fee at the time for JGR was $800,000. Confirmed. I confirmed that one at the time. So $800,000 spread over the life of his contract, plus his salary that he has right now, should be able to buy down. So that is a method that Ray could employ with his GAM and TAM if he wants to free up that kind of a roster slot. But that would presumably hinge upon the fact that he has a replacement ready to go. If you don't have a replacement U22, it's almost not worth wasting the TAM or GAM to buy him down and just clear up a slot if you're not going to immediately replace it, knowing that we'll be able to replace it this summer. All right, that's my soapbox on the roster profile. Anything else you want to know? Stu, we have 5 roster slots available. That's the last thing I wanted to say is not with all the official players signed right now. We have 5 roster slots available. The senior supplemental, it's nebulous because I've got Josh Yarrow on the supplemental, hoping that he took a senior minimum contract to come back. I've got Ben Lunt on the senior. I've seen other folks that have both of them on the senior roster. Bottom line is we have 5 open roster slots. Polvera should take one of them. And then you could be looking at a trialist or super draft pick in Lillington or McNaughton or Palmer Alt or one of the unknown 2 trialists that are other in camp to take up another slot. So there should still be a slot or 2 left available to bring in someone from the outside, even in this window, assuming you sign a couple of guys from the super draft or trialist group.
Yeah, and it's looking likely also with our international slots that we'll have an international slot. Probably not 2. We probably won't trade both of them away, keep some flexibility.
Right.
But we might be able to bring in another, I don't know, $200,000 in GAM. It's hard to tell whatever the market is at the moment for those. But there's a chance to kind of use a little more MLS leverage on what we can get out of this window.
Stu, last thing I want to do, because I know your time is limited, I want to look at the potential depth charts that we're dealing with here. Let's zoom in on this a little bit and see 2 potential formations and how the current crop of players, based on who is in camp right now, what that might look like. It's better than it has been the past couple of weeks in a lot of perspectives, but at the same time, there are now other holes that exist. So looking at our back line of a 4-2-3-1, we would have, I would project Rafael Santos as our left back, Falufal as one of our center backs, and either Mbake Fall or Timo Baumgartel as the other center back. Health depending, you might have an Mbake Baumgartel duo to start. Beyond that, you've got Hebert and Yarrow and Orozco as your depth. And then on the right back side, I have Conrad Wallem over Thomas Tallon. That is a very much in the air, but I think that highlights depth that we now have, where Conrad Wallem can slide around just about everywhere. Left back, right back, center mid, a wide attacking mid. But Wallem as our right back and Santos as our left back is our best cumulative combination that gives us the width and the attacking prowess on both sides. In the midfield, I've got Leuven and Edelman with Durkin and Perez. And Ostrak can also play central mid and will. Our three attacking midfielders I would have as Celio Pompeu, Marcel Hartl, and Songbin Jong, with Simon Betcher as our striker. Other options in that area include Mackay Joyner, Cedric Toyshirt, Brendan McSorley, and that's it. I hesitate to mention the remaining player who hasn't seen time in either of the 2 preseason games because I will see red a little bit on that one. What do you think of this 4-2-3-1?
So yeah, I mean, I think Orozco is a backup there. Yeah,
It's not
I mean,
great.
No, I mean, I think it's a little bit of previous managers. I think Hebert would absolutely slot in as the backup left back in this formation. I don't know where DeMay rates Orozco. It looks a lot better than it did previously. And something that Povera will help with is when he comes in, if he comes in that 8th spot, he allows Conrad Vollum to remain dedicated at the right back spot or right wing back spot, and he isn't going to necessarily be jumping around the field, having to fit in multiple, slots and positions, and he can just, excel in one role, hopefully in 2026 going forward.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks a lot better than it did. Assuming everyone's healthy and, Falou Fall's not healthy right now.
Correct.
And we have a glaring black hole, of course, in that, 9 spot.
Yes. And if we switch over to the 3-4-2-1 potential look here, I actually like this a little bit more, even though our center back depth is what scares me in this. That's why I think if I like the shape of this, but I really think we need an additional center back. And I do think that center back is going to come in the form of Zach Lillington or Lucas McNaughton. Most easily it will. But in a 3-4-2-1, you're looking at a starting center back core of Falou and Mbake Fall and Timo Baumgartel. Those are your 3 starting center backs. That's a no-brainer to me at this moment. Left wing back, I have is Rafael Santos. Right wing back is Conrad Vollum. Central midfielders are Edu Leuven and Daniel Edelman. Your attacking midfielders are Marcel Hartl and Songbin Jong. Simon Betcher is your striker. The depth in this is probably it evens out better. I think the depth in this because you're looking at a left wing back depth of either Mackay Joyner or Celio Pompeu. Even though I'd much prefer Joyner in that wide area, and Celio Pompeu would be backing up a Songbin or a Marcel Hartl alongside a Cedric Toyshirt if he's healthy and a Brendan McSorley. Thomas Totland remains an option on the right side. Totland's basically limited on where he can appear versus Conrad Vollum, where Vollum could jump again all over the place. He could cover for Leuven in the midfield if Leuven has to miss time. So it could end up being a Vollum-Edelman central midfield duo with Totland starting at right wing back. I would still be okay with that depth. Durkin and Edelman is still being talked about as a partnership in some way, shape, or form, but it gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit. Our attacking core, I think, it's better. It's more focused in the attacking midfielders, and the wide attack is where I think we're really strong in this one. It gives us width with Hartl being able to kind of go all over the place. But the biggest problem is Simon Betcher at striker, unproven in the ability to score goals over a long period of time, with his only true sample size of success being 10 games in 2024. If you look at this 3-4-2-1 versus the 4-2-3-1, based on who would actually be starting in how the shape looks, which do you feel more comfortable with given the players currently on our roster?
Yeah, I'm definitely 5 at the back in our current formation, what you're presenting. And I know it gives you the heebie-jeebies, but with Fall, Timo, and Mbake Fall as your 3 center back pairing, they all love the ball at their feet. They're all great progressing the ball downfield. It negates kind of the negatives of a double pivot of Edelman and Durkin in that situation.
Fair.
But I mean, it still wouldn't be my preferred choice.
If we add in guys like McNaughton and Lillington, which would fill 2 of our last 5 roster slots, it does start to look a little bit better. McNaughton, I think, I don't know how McNaughton would play in a 3 center back look. He doesn't have to play on the right side. He could play central over Josh Yarrow. So there's movement that could happen here, but Lillington, I think, would be the right center back, backing up Mbake Fall. That gives me a little more, and knowing Orozco could start too. I like what I've seen of him on the left side defensively. So I think I'm okay with this if we have to see Falou Fall miss time to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love that idea, but we also gave Olaf hell last year for being, oops, all center backs out there, and now we're looking at a potential situation where we start 2026 with 8 center backs on the roster if you slot Orozco in there.
Oof.
So
there's a question in the chat from Mellow STL. Why not play a false 9 since we don't have a striker anyways? Not opposed to that. I'm just opposed to Betcher in that role. I think Betcher's qualities and skill that he's shown, he likes to be higher up on the field, breaking the lines of the defense. He doesn't like to tuck in, where you could argue that Klaus at times played like a false 9. Betcher, to me, is not that striker. He has different characteristics, different qualities, and his skill set doesn't match what that role would be. So if you're looking for that, you might be better suited with a Brendan McSorley as your striker. I could see that working based on what McSorley was doing at City 2 and the limited time he had with City. I think his skills and the way he finds space on the field, that would align better with a false 9 if you want to go that route. And looking at this depth chart where I have Betcher and Glover at striker and McSorley buried down here in attacking mid, that could easily be McSorley backing up Betcher. And I do expect to see McSorley sub in for Betcher at times. Just depth charts are the way they are. Caden Glover was the player that I didn't want to name earlier, by the way, because he hasn't appeared in either preseason game. And he's, I think, the only player rostered to not appear with an excuse of health or something of that kind. So he worries me continuously. Brendan McSorley is our next option at striker. That's pretty clear to me.
Yeah, and we could always see one of the trialists slot in as well. But likely, I mean, we could see Palmer start the season with City 2 as potentially, one of those injury guys called up later on in the season. We'll see.
This is a good reminder. I almost, because of his injury, I almost forgot about this. Cedric Toyshirt is an option as a false 9, not just Brendan McSorley, but if and when Toyshirt gets to full health. That's his biggest thing. And that's why I have him buried behind Songbin right now. I would not be opposed to Cedric Toyshirt playing as a false 9 of sorts, an underneath role that gives Songbin an ability to overlap, maybe utilize Saley or Songbin's speed on the outsides of a Cedric Toyshirt. I think that could work. I just need Cedric Toyshirt to be healthy to seriously consider it. He's started training. He's training up with the team. Obviously didn't appear in the preseason matches, so there's a lot to be known about his availability before I'm going to start tossing him into options to start, at least at the beginning of the season. Stu, I know you got to go. Any other parting words before you have to jump and I cover the preseason matches?
No, it's just going to be really interesting. Looking forward to seeing everyone at Energizer Park in 23 days now. So let's go City.
And if you're available next week, the Luligans have rescheduled their AGM meeting from what was a snow-laden weekend freezing to it's next Wednesday, correct, Stu?
That's actually breaking news to me. I didn't see that. So I'll make sure to clear my schedule for next Wednesday.
Yeah, next Wednesday. I think it's at Schlafly. Double check the St. Luligans social media. That's always something that we like to attend. Longtime Luligans here on the episode or on the show. So if you can make some time, I think it's 6 to 7 o'clock, and it's always a good time to hang out with fellow City supporters across the spectrum, not just Luligans, but all kinds of supporter groups. And with that, Stu, have a good one. We'll talk to you later.
Yep. See you next week.
And the rest of the show, we're going to talk about some matches. Let's see what we can glean from some of these preseason matches. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat. But we did have 2 matches this week, and we don't care about the results of any of them, do we? It was a 3-1 loss to Red Bull New York and a 2-2 draw against the Tampa Bay Rowdies. And yes, the AGM is February 4th at Byron Tim says 7. We'll see. Byron Tim, if you're right. I thought I saw 6, but we'll check on that one. The starting 11s is where I want to start with the first match. Not necessarily for who started, but just kind of seeing what positions players might be profiling at a little bit. The takeaways from these matches, these first 2 preseason matches. Thank you, Jerry. I was wrong, Tim. Sorry about that. 7 p.m. February 4th, Luling AGM, and I believe it's at Schlafly. The first half starting lineup of the Red Bull New York game had Ben Lunt, Timo Baumgartel, Simon Betcher, Daniel Edelman, Makai Joyner, Zach Lillington, Edu Leuven, Haziel Orozco, Miguel Perez, Song Bin Zhang, and a trialist. Now, there's a couple things that I have looked at with these preseason matches. None of them have to do with the results. None of them even have to do with the fact that there was a sub later on, it's necessarily. But the biggest thing was trying to figure out who was playing where on the field. Where is Yoann Damet trying to find players' best profiles? The ultimate goal that Damet said is to get guys fit. So 45 minutes for the first group, 45 minutes for the second group. That continued into the second game. So this could be a 4-3-3. It could be a 3-4-2-1. The obvious ones are Timo Baumgartel, Zach Lillington, Haziel Orozco as defenders. The trialist is probably a center back, Lucas McNaughton, or there's an NCAA collegiate center back in camp right now that we'll find out their name on Monday. You also had Miguel Perez, who can play as a fullback of sorts, but you also had Edelman and Leuven as your midfielders, and Makai Joyner, Simon Betcher, and Songbin as your forwards. There's a lot of players who are locked in at where they're going to play. This first game, to me, really was more get guys out there in ish areas with which they're going to be playing. And the alphabetical lineup with the goalkeeper at the top is taking last year's starting 11 graphic to an absurd level. So I guess a tip of the cap to whoever put this together with that little twist from last season, because it's diabolical. The second half, you really seemed like you had a 3 center back look, and they didn't put a graphic for the second half, but it was Roman Berkey, Kyle Hebert, Josh Arrow, a trialist, Chris Durkin, Cooper Forcellini, Marcel Hartle, Tyson Pierce, Celio Pompeu, another trialist, and Brendan McSorley. So one of the trialists was Palmer Alt. The other was likely that other center back. Really seemed like you had 3 center backs with a couple of wing backs in play here. Maybe Tyson Pierce, maybe Celio Pompeu. The only sub in this one was Thomas Tolland for Kyle Hebert. And this is just a return to form for both players. Kyle Hebert missed the first week. He returned. Thomas Tolland missed the first week. He returned. By the second game, both players were kind of ready to go and starting and playing a lot more time. Key plays in the first game. Red Bulls scored 3 right off the jump. 9th minute, 25th minute, 36th minute. Cade Cowell had assists on all 3. Celio Pompeu had a goal for St. Louis. He recovered a ball in the attacking half, took it the distance, and he appeared to beat Tim Parker when he recovered it. So that was kind of cool to see. And Roman Berkey had a PK save. That's probably the story of the entire game, is Roman Berkey had a 47th minute penalty kick save, something that we desperately hope to see continue into the regular season, because that's absolutely been missing from his repertoire, possibly the only thing that's been missing. Now, the second match, the one where Edu Leuven was not available due to personal reasons, the second match had a starting 11 that featured Berkey in goal. Our defense, and if you're looking at the live stream, you can see the graphic. Our defense was Timo Baumgartel, a likely center back trialist, and Josh Yarrow. So I think it was 3 center backs. You had Haziel Orozco and Tyson Pierce as the likely wing backs. Midfielders of Chris Durkin and Miguel Perez, with Celio Pompeu and Marcel Hartle right above them, and Simon Betcher as your striker. So a 3-4-2-1, as clear as anything could be with this group of players. The second half, honestly, I thought the second half was stronger. You had Ben Lunt in goal, which that's obviously not stronger. But the defense of Kyle Hebert, Zach Lillington, and another center back trialist, that's a pretty fair swap from that first half. Hebert, Lillington, and trialist. The wingbacks being Rafael Santos seeing his first action and Thomas Totland on the right side. That's a good wingback group to me. I would be happy with that being our match day 1 wingback pairing if it ends up being the case. Midfielders were Daniel Edelman, Cooper Forcellini, Makai Joyner, Song Bin Zhang, and Brendan McSorley. So another 3-4-2-1 with Edelman and probably Forcellini in the central midfield as your 6 and 8 respectively, and Makai Joyner on the left, Songbin Zhang on the right, and Brendan McSorley as your 9. That's another 3-4-2-1 to me. It seems like from these first two, if you're going to read something into it, that Yohan Deme seems to be trending towards 3 center backs. But the takeaway, though, is hearkening back to what Deme was saying about you may start with a particular formation and it may mold or adapt or be flexible in how the movements actually occur. You might look like you're dropping a Rafael Santos back a little deeper when Thomas Totland pushes up, and all of a sudden it looks like 4 in the back. It's going to be fluid. It's going to be flexible, and that's probably going to consist through the entire season. So if you love calling out formations, then we're going to have fun with it. If you hate it, don't hate us too much for at least mentioning it a few times, and we will call out how it moves and how the shapes change dynamically based on game movements. In this game against the Tampa Bay Rowdies on match day 2 on Wednesday, they went down 1-0, but then had goals scored by Rafael Santos and Songbin Zhang, both on free kicks. We had a left-footed free kick by Rafael Santos that curled past the keeper, and a right-footed free kick by Songbin Zhang. Seemed like it was right outside the box, and it just froze the keeper. That was an awesome. The highlights were great. City's posted them on their social media. Both free kicks in the second half. We do have comments from Yohan Deme, so I'm going to play those. These are comments that Deme had after the second game, after the 2-2 draw against Tampa Bay. It was the final game in Florida for City, and it was the day that they were traveling back. This was Deme as he's kind of wrapping up his thoughts on Florida, what their goals were, what they accomplished, and kind of starting to turn the page. So check this out.
Like we're new into this, so like with a new staff, with some new players, some new additions coming in, it's about getting to know each other, like primarily, and then of course like there's a fitness base to develop like during those weeks of preseason, and the most important for me is to get across like the tactical message that we want to deliver to the players. So again, with new ideas coming, with like a fresh playing style. There is a lot to talk about. There's a lot to work on. And I think during preseason, it's always interesting. You've got that first like 10, 12 days where everything is new. And then slowly you can see how quickly the players like embrace it and get on board. And now as we approach of like the second part of preseason and the start of the season, it's about like competition, being more and more competitive, starting to create more association amongst the players, develop more relationship like between some guys, and yeah, be ready for the start.
That was City head coach Yohan Deme talking preseason, what the goals were, and kind of what we can expect going forward as they wrap up preseason. To look ahead at what City is doing right now, they are currently in St. Louis. They are training from January 29th through February 2nd in St. Louis before going to California, Palm Springs, California, for a closed-door friendly on February 4th against the Portland Timbers. I believe that is next Wednesday. A February 7th match against Austin FC. That's a Coachella Valley Invitational. So the first true opportunity that we should have to see St. Louis play is February 7th. Do believe that's a Saturday. February 11th is their second and final Coachella Valley Invitational match against the LA Galaxy. This is our first chance to see Klaus on the other side. LA Galaxy, February 11th at Coachella Valley. That should be streamed, and we'll have more information on where. It's probably the City app and their YouTube page. And then City wraps up their preseason action on February 14th, Valentine's Day, with a closed-door friendly 1 week before they start the regular season, this one against DC United. So we will have 2 opportunities on February 7th and the 11th to watch City play. One of them, we're circling our calendars against the LA Galaxy for those obvious reasons, to see for ourselves what this might look like, to see how right we might have been on some of these player profile positionings in Florida and how that translates. As Deme himself said, they're looking to kind of take it from getting fit to now positional profiles, employ a lot of what they've been learning a little more intentionally at this point. So that's what we have to look forward to. A lot of fun in the next couple of weeks as we look to see City on the field for the first time. Other things to look forward to are the jersey reveal. We're not going to talk much more other than the fact that we're still targeting early to mid-February, but 1 to 2 weeks out of the season if previous schedules hold for that. And Then, like we mentioned, Flyover Footy will have our live show on the 19th ahead of Charlotte FC's home game, where we get to see Henry Kessler help kick off the season at Energizer Park on February 21st. There's a couple of bits of news that I want to get to before we round out this episode, one of which is really interesting and one of which is kind of frustrating. The frustrating aspect is on Thursday, news came out that MLS is changing how they're operating on Apple TV, and it mainly affects the Spanish broadcast. As we all know, MLS Season Pass is gone. It's no longer a secondary paywall for MLS matches. It's just Apple TV. You have an Apple TV subscription. You can watch all MLS matches. The report in The Guardian is that from Pablo Iglesias Maurer is that MLS is making significant cuts to their broadcast in Spanish, scaling back Spanish broadcast talent during the regular season. They said they had 5 sources of this familiar with the league's plans, saying that the plan would be not only to outsource some production from the US to the UK, but looking at cutting back the number of talent they have with Spanish broadcasts. The league will employ about half as many 2-man Spanish language commentary teams, leaving the rest of the matches with a single play-by-play announcer. And MLS has plans to retain what it deems to be its 7 best Spanish language play-by-play and commentary pairings. League source indicated the pairings of Sammy Sodavnik and Diego Valeri, Ramsey Sandoval and Miguel Gallardo, and Jorge Perez Navarro and Marcelo Balboa will be among those pairings kept. So if you or someone you know loves those announcers and you take in the matches in Spanish, they're going to be returning as a partnership, but everybody else is kind of on the chopping block, it seems like. Also, MLS will no longer produce a Spanish language version of MLS 360, their whip around style show that is an in-studio show taking a look at all the matches happening, featuring live look-ins and commentary on multiple matches at once. The English language version is unaffected, but the Spanish language version is going away. MLS cited, or the anonymous sources said that the viewership numbers are different between English and Spanish for these MLS 360 broadcasts. Spanish language consumers simply prefer watching matches to in-studio programming. It's hard to read the plans as anything other than the league saying they value Spanish-speaking and Latino fans less than others. It was the quote in the article. Some really frustrating things to hear if you're a Spanish language fan and you want to have the equality between broadcasts. The other big news is the downsizing of the English language offerings. The season passes English language offerings that used to have MLS wrap up airing at the end of each match night featuring analysts will no longer be produced in its previous state. A league source confirmed that a post-match night component will still exist, but viewers will no longer see in-studio talent on camera. I got to say, I loved this. I loved the wrap-up show. You finish watching the final match of the evening, and you relax by letting them show you what's going on throughout the league. We see it in the Premier League. We see it elsewhere on the legitimate broadcasts everywhere. They're doing away with the wrap-up as it exists now. That's frustrating. And then the final thing that seems to be changing is production moving to London. Now, the MLS claims in this article that the on-air, the graphics, the on-air quality isn't going to suffer, but there will be a difference behind the scenes in some of the production occurring in London, where the talent and obviously the cameras and everything are still live in America. But we'll have to wait to see what actually this brings. Supposedly the benefit of this is leaning into existing infrastructure at IMG, which is where they're going to be housing that in London. Everything else, graphics, look and feel, announcers on site, none of that changes. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can detect or glean any differences in the broadcast. The final thing that I want to get to is actually a kind of a fun one. And it's the USL. It's not often that I talk about the USL on this show, but the USL has made waves this week. And if you didn't hear about it, it's possible that at some point this might affect Major League Soccer. It doesn't right now, obviously. But the biggest news is the USL has revealed or unveiled more information about their men's professional structure. They are introducing, if you hadn't heard, Pro-Rel in America for the first time. There will be a new USL Premier League, which is a Division I league that will theoretically compete directly with Major League Soccer as Division I leagues in America, followed by the current state USL Championship, which is Division II, and then USL League One, which is Division III. The Division I USL Premier will be a national table. It'll be launching in 2028. The USL Championship will remain national, and the USL League One will go to a regional format. This all happening 2 years removed from the World Cup after MLS makes their switch on the calendar. It's not hard to see a one-upsmanship kind of starting to develop here, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see responses of some sort by MLS in secondary ways, whether it's roster rules being relaxed or doing something to one-up USL in trying to remain with their competitive advantage. USL has their litany of problems. The Players Association has an airing of grievances about conditions not being standard, not being up to what professional soccer players should have. There's a lot of nuances that go into this. So if you're curious about this, check out the USL Players Association social media accounts. Check out the USL and their social media for what they've been talking about with this new structure. A lot of interesting things happening there. But for us with St. Louis City, I will wrap it up with a reminder that St. Louis is in St. Louis for the next few days training through February 2nd. We hope to have some kind of media availability on Monday, whether it's being able to chat with Yoann Demey and some players, or just getting to see training, finding out who some of these trialists are. That's a hanging Chad of sorts, where we have 2 trialists in camp and we don't know who they are, but I'm told that we should have an updated roster of who all is in camp on Monday before the team goes to Coachella for the second leg of preseason. That's all for Flyover Footy. Appreciate you all joining Stu on this halfway marker. Because like I said, we are halfway through preseason. Hard to believe, but we're here. And it's only a few more weeks until we have the start of the regular season. We have one more player we hope to hear announced either the end of this week or beginning of next, and that's Dante Polvera, the midfielder from Aberdeen. And that's the only rumor we have at the moment. I hate to leave you with negative news, but you saw the potential depth charts that we showed. You saw what St. Louis has been doing as far as bringing in players that can make immediate impacts on day one, where you saw the players that are outgoing, a lot of squad rotation players. There's more work to be done. There's more roster slots to be filled, and we have a few weeks left to do it. There are plenty of mechanisms to be able to sign these players. We have open roster slots. We have an open DP or U22 slot. We are flush with GAM. If you saw that club roster profile I shared, if we convert all of Klaus's transfer fee into general allocation money, we now have over $8 million in general allocation money available. With a roster, with the amount that we have to spend on the roster to make it compliant, we would still have around $4 million-ish of GAM. That's a ton of GAM, and it can make a meaningful impact into at least one, if not 2 players that we can bring in through intra-league trades with GAM or buying down somebody's transfer fee from abroad. Stay tuned. There's lots of work to be done yet, and there's time to do it before the season starts, and we still haven't even seen and laid eyes on the club yet. That's one thing. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of movement that's happening, causing some anxiety with key pieces from last season being removed. But we'll find out on February 7th, when we can actually see this team with our own eyes, what it looks like at that point, when we're a month into Yoann Demey implementing his fundamentals, his instructions, his style, and a month into the team having the experience of understanding that. So stay tuned. There's no reason to be massively pessimistic in the preseason. Preseason is a time that breeds hope. It could be worse. Kansas City is still in a worse roster position than we are. And not every team is making all these massive flashy moves. Columbus has one incoming move so far that I've seen. We're not massively abnormal, and we're undergoing a seismic change in what our club and our front office looked like this time last year. With all that said, hope breeds eternal. I hope you stick with it. I hope you're enjoying this. I hope you're enjoying hearing about City and following the team. There's nothing I love more than doing this kind of thing and talking about the team that we all love, and we all want to see them succeed. So for Stuart Holkgren, my name is Matt Baker. Thank you for tuning in to Flyover Footy. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you later.